The anniversary of the invasion is happening in less than 48 hours, and knowing how much Russian authorities love symbolism, most certainly something is about to happen. For example, recently Putin did his address to the Federal Assembly and to the nation, and he basically urged the entire country of Russia to fight until the very end, because according to him, the truth is on Russian side. The questions are, what is about to happen, what is the reaction of the Western world, and what is just happening overall in the east of Ukraine. But more about all of this in just a couple of minutes. What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. And let's go straight to the point and see some most recent footage. And our first video comes to us from the United Kingdom, where we can see the King Charles III visiting Ukrainian soldiers training to use the Western military equipment. And speaking about Ukrainians using Western machinery, according to the Prime Minister of Netherlands, Mark Rutte, Ukrainians will most likely receive advanced air defense systems Patriot in the next couple of months, because at this very moment they're about to finish their extensive training. Then we have a statement from Pentagon claiming that a group of 635 Ukrainian soldiers have already finished training on their armored personnel carriers called Bradleys. And at this very moment, the second group of 710 Ukrainians will start their own training. And later on, the third group of 890 Ukrainians will be training how to use armored military vehicle called Striker. Next we have a statement from Germany, which claims that Ukraine will receive 20 armored fighting vehicles called Marder in March, and then somewhere in July there will be additional ammunition for Gepard tanks. And speaking about the tanks, according to the president of Poland, Andrzej Duda, Ukraine will receive its Leopard 2 tanks within the next 1 to 2 months. And the reason for this, because they are right now being repaired and the Ukrainian personnel is being trained. And then, according to the representative of the European Union, Josep Borrell, the Union will have an emergency meeting to determine how much and how fast they can deliver as many ammunition to Ukraine as possible. And just overall, out of 320 confirmed tanks, about 50 of them will arrive by the end of April, which unfortunately will not be yet enough to launch the Ukrainian offensive, but this is a pretty good start. And right before we talk about the Putin's address to the nation, just literally a couple more words about the aerial military vehicles. And first of all, in this picture we can see the legendary American helicopter called Black Hawk, which is being used by the Defense Intelligence Services of Ukraine, and the location is obviously undisclosed. But this is one of the earliest signs that the Western world already started, at least indirectly, transporting their military combat flying machines. And ultimately, the country of Italy has already pledged 5 fighter jets to Ukraine, but they said that they will only deliver them when other European countries do the same. And basically, yes, to break the pace of video, let me just awkwardly ask you if you can please like this video and subscribe to my channel if you like this style of daily news updating. It does help channel a lot. You can also follow me on Instagram to see how I live outside of YouTube. But okay, and now as promised, let's talk about this Putin's most recent address to the nation, and I do have some other details which you might have missed. So, it all started with these huge digital billboards all the way across Russia, which were promoting this event, and the slogan was that the power is in truth. Come listen Putin's address to the nation. But some regions maybe they did not want to spend much on these promotions, that is why they use these stationary billboards, which are just saying watch and listen. Pretty dry and kinda passive-aggressive, even towards their own fellow citizens, but okay. In the morning of the event, the convoy of Putin was spotted driving towards Kremlin, and in the best traditions, all the surrounding streets were completely closed to these regular people. The speech was scheduled to start at noon local time, but people started arriving as early as 2 hours in advance, just for Putin to be late again. But okay, eventually Putin started, the whole speech lasted for almost 2 hours, And in the very beginning he was saying his usual things, that the Western countries were preparing the aggression against Russia, and it was Russia who was trying to prevent all of this from happening, but they did not allow the motherland to do it. That is why Russia did not have any other choice. Then Putin mentioned that this whole strategy, how to invade and threaten Russia, was planned all the way long before 2022, and then Ukraine did countless attempts to receive the nuclear weapons. He even mentioned these long forgotten biolaboratories which were discovered on the territory of Ukraine, and that Americans, they completely, not just Americans, but I mean the Western world, they completely lost all the morale and principles just to pursue their financial goals. Putin then also claimed that it was the Western world which started this war, and now Russia is forced to use the force. I know it doesn't make sense, but Russia is forced to use the force to stop this war. And so the goal of Russia is to protect its territories and its people, even though they do it by invading another country somehow. And the goal of America is the unlimited power. It was also the Western world which created Nazis back in 30s and 40s, and now they're doing just the same. Putin then also claimed that the Western countries, they initiated this war far from their own territories, somewhere in the east, and they do it with the hands of Ukrainians, and at the same time they're testing their own weapons. And all of this is to take away the historic territories of Russia. Oh yeah, and by the way, this entire speech was broadcasted across Russia on these massive billboards. And I don't know about you, but it does give me some Big Brothers watching you vibes, right? Then Putin continued that Russia is impossible to be defeated on the battlefields. That is why the Western countries started attacking the whole way of living Russian lifestyle, which basically means family principles, the culture, and just the idea of being a Russian. Then he also mentioned those Russians who left the country as soon as this war, and especially the partial mobilization, started, and he said that unlike the Western world, we will not do anything, because it is their own decision. We are not going to persecute them, to follow them, because already family and friends, they're already judging them. It's more than enough. Closer to the end, Putin was once again talking about these illegally annexed territories, Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporozhye and Kherson, and he just welcomed them to their homeland. And then he claimed that all these Western sanctions had absolutely no effect against the Russian economy, which is absolutely prevailing right now. The effect of the sanctions was so negligible, according to him, that even the most common people of Russia, they didn't feel anything whenever their yachts and palaces were taken away. And yes, you heard it right. Regular people, yachts and palaces. I have no idea in which world he lives, when the regular average salary is about $800 per month. But this is what he said, literally. And probably one of the most important statements that he made is that Russia temporarily suspends its participation in the nuclear arms treaty, or how he called them, strategically advancing offensive weapons. He said that Russia is more than ready to test these weapons and maybe even use them in case necessary, but it will not do it first, not until Washington or any other Western world will do just the same. But rest assured, the people of Russia, he claimed, because the truth is on our side, and Russia will do everything possible. We will fight until the very end to prove it that we are the good ones. And so yes, after all these militaristic statements and once again yet another nuclear threats, what about the inner Putin circle? What about these people who support him the most? Right here, for example, we have just a small section of the front row of these people, and none of them neither went to the army, and nor any of their children have ever been to the army or fighting in Ukraine. So pretty much, as always, the very same story. It is our common goal to achieve the prosperity of Russia. but there are only gonna be selected few who do not need to do anything, but they will enjoy the most of it. And so yes, I have many more pictures from this event and even some video bloopers of people in the audience listening to Putin and just being ridiculous, and I uploaded them to my Patreon with still 1 week of free access. And if you want to see these photos and videos in addition to all the other uncensored footage, the link will be down below. But okay, so what's the response of the Western world? And just for example, let's take the president of the US, Joe Biden, who recently visited the capital of Ukraine, Kiev. This meeting was unannounced and highly secretive, that is why no one knew about it until it actually happened. And one of the main topics of this conversation between the presidents was obviously the support of America to Ukraine. In addition to Joe Biden, some other American representatives also visited Ukraine, such as for example Jake Sullivan, who's the advisor to the President of the US of the national security. And one of the earliest results of this meeting was that Biden announced another almost $500 million military support package to Ukraine. And the contents of this package are HIMARS and Javelin missiles, ammunition, combat military vehicles, and just other military supportive equipment. Then Biden also claimed that America, along with 50 of its allies, already pledged 700 total tanks to Ukraine. And this in addition to thousands military combat vehicles which Ukraine is also about to receive. And the most conservative response of Zelensky was that Ukraine will win. After his visit to Ukraine, Joe Biden started going towards Poland, where he gave his own speech addressing Ukrainians, the world, and Russians. He started by saying that 1 year ago everyone was saying that Kiev will fall, but he was just in this city and it is standing as strong as ever. Biden also claimed that this current war is the biggest since the Second World War, and this is a true test for the NATO countries. And even though Putin wanted to destroy NATO from the inside, right now the alliance is stronger than ever, and besides that, America and the rest of the world was able to reduce its dependability on Russian energy sources, which Putin was claiming that it will never be possible. Joe Biden then continued that Putin did not want NATO to expand, and now they're waiting for 2 new members, Sweden and Finland. And right now, Putin is entertaining the very same hopes that one day the Western support to Ukraine will be over, but America will never stop supporting this country. And ultimately, he started directly contradicting Putin, is that America and Europe does not want to destroy Russia. Regular Russian people have nothing to be afraid of. They are not the target of these Western weapons, and it is only Putin's propaganda which makes them think so. He then added that there are Ukrainian flags in every city in America, and Ukrainians should not be afraid, because the rest of the world is behind their back. Alright, enough with politics for today, let's take a look at what's actually happening in Ukraine and in Russia. And first of all, reportedly 6 Russian soldiers mysteriously eliminated themselves whenever they were trying to fire a furnace in Kursk region. Then we go to Belgorod, where recently the Russian air defense system has been spotted being active. And speaking about the borders between Russia and Ukraine, according to the Ukrainian Defense Intelligence, Russia has approximately 450 planes and 300 helicopters being on standby no further than 200 kilometers away from the borders with Ukraine, which only confirms the fact that Russia is planning to do something big in the next 48 hours. Then we have a report by the Institute for the Study of War, which claims that several Russian soldiers crossed the border and occupied an unspecified settlement in Kharkov region. At the same time, Russia traditionally has been focusing their attacks along Svatove-Kreminna road, and especially they're fortifying their front lines to the west of Kreminna. As we go to Bakhmut, Ukrainians were able to destroy a small Russian unit to the north of this settlement. And the biggest assaults of Russians at this very moment are happening to the north of Bakhmut and also to the south, where they try to bypass Ivanovsky defenses from the west. But so far, especially in the south south, Ukrainians are able to hold their ground. Ukrainians then also reportedly were able to destroy a reconnaissance group of Russians in Klishchiivka. And speaking about just overall combat activities in this area, recently I received a total of almost 15 minutes of a trench warfare footage, where 2 Ukrainian soldiers are defending themselves against a dozen of Russians, and they do it successfully. The videos are just too long, and they might not be accepted by YouTube, that is why you can find them as always on my Patreon, where there's still 1 week of free access. And okay, as we go more to the south, Ukrainians were also able to destroy a Russian military convoy located next to Marinka. And ultimately, it looks like that the Russian offensive in Vuhledar has almost completely exhausted itself, but at the same time we have several reports that now Ukrainians are conducting their own counter-offensive. And before we talk about the situation in the south, let's take a look at this map, which shows us the changes in territorial control. And first of all, as you can see right here, Ukrainians were able to fight and take back some of its land to the east of Veselye. As we go to Bakhmut, we can see that Russians were able to make some marginal gains around this settlement, but not from the west, and then Ukrainians were able to take some of its land back next to Yehidne. Going more to the north, we can see that Ukrainians were able to liberate a pretty good amount of land to the west of Shipilevka. And ultimately, Ukrainians were also able to advance a little bit closer to the northwest of Svatove. Alright, we are almost done here, just literally a couple more words about the situation in the south. And first of all, in Berdyansk, reportedly mysteriously some Russian barracks were caught on fire. Then we have some other reports that Wagner soldiers were spotted arriving to Melitopol. And as we go more to the north, Russians attempted to advance next to Novodanilivka, but they were unsuccessful. Moving to Kherson region, Ukrainians were able to reportedly destroy a Russian military base located on one of these islands on Dnipro River. But then Russians had their own response and they attacked the city of Kherson with this kind of ammunition. So just please let me know in the comments what do you think it is. And then the next day there was yet another attack of Russians which targeted the residential building and a bus stop. And so yes, Russians are bringing a lot of helicopters and military planes closer to the borders. There are Wagner soldiers spotted in the south. The number of Russian forces in the east is big, and the anniversary of the invasion is just in less than 2 days. Something is definitely coming. And just once again, if you don't want to miss any of this as soon as it starts happening, just please consider subscribing to my channel. It only takes 1 click. And if you want to support my work financially, please consider becoming my channel member, use a PayPal link, or become my Patreon, where there's still 1 week of free access. You can find all the other links to the right and down below. Thank you so much for your attention, товарищи, and see you tomorrow.